A military helicopter sprays sticky decontamination fluid near the Chernobyl nuclear plant on April 29, 1986, in an attempt to limit radioactive spread. American soldiers crouch behind a barge bulkhead before storming the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, a decisive moment in World War II. On May 6, 1937, a badly injured survivor of the Hindenburg disaster smokes a cigarette while being carried to safety after the airship exploded during landing. In 1913, at Gettysburg, veterans gathered at the Bloody Angle, where 3,000 soldiers lost their lives during one of the American Civil War's most critical battles. A displaced woman who fled World War I with her cow sits on a bench in Amiens, France, March 28, 1918. A young girl works in a South Carolina cotton mill around 1908, reflecting the widespread child labor of the industrial era. French soldiers of the 49th Infantry Regiment play cards in a trench during the harsh winter of 1916. A soldier returns home to Vienna, Austria in 1945, joining countless emotional reunions across Europe at the end of World War II. Albert Lowenstein, the world's third richest man, is photographed boarding his plane in 1928, minutes before his mysterious disappearance mid-flight. In 1962, the heavy AMAZ Z7310 transporter hauls a tank to store liquid hydrogen at the Baitar Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, Soviet Union. In September 1918, 21,000 U.S. soldiers formed the shape of President Woodrow Wilson to show solidarity during World War I. Two Bodo individuals with sharpened teeth illustrate a cultural tradition of body modification practiced in parts of Africa. Robert Huliston, born with severe joint deformities, spent 36 years performing in circuses from 1895 to 1970. At the Donaldsonville State Fair in Louisiana in 1938, a fair barker poses with sideshow performers. Crowds gather in the 1910s at Coney Island's Dreamland Wild Animal Arena to watch an unidentified performer. Barbar, the bearded dwarf, crawls on all fours at Valley Fair in 1938, when circus and sideshow acts captivated audiences. A gathering of Dakota Indians in the 1880s reflects the struggles of native tribes amid U.S. westward expansion. The backstage area of circus tents, known as the backyard, became a familiar feature of traveling shows in 1928. In 1987, entire apartment blocks in Blaj, Romania, were moved to make way for urban modernization projects. Damaged buses became temporary shelters in Tokyo on October 2, 1946, during a severe post-war housing crisis. In 1982, U.S. workers symbolically smashed a Japanese car with a hammer to protest foreign competition in the auto industry. A broken statue head of a Soviet leader lies in Budapest during the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. A French contortionist poses around 1865 when contortion acts were a circus highlight. In 1945, a Japanese-American family returns home to Los Angeles after years in internment camps during World War II. At just 16, Walt Disney drove a Red Cross ambulance in World War I before rising to animation fame. Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali, poses after winning gold in light heavyweight boxing at the Rome Olympics. The Colosseum in Rome, photographed in 1944, as the city transitioned from German occupation to Allied liberation. A Civil War field hospital in Michigan, 1860s, highlights the grim medical realities of battlefield care. Lyndon B. Johnson is sworn in as president aboard Air Force One on November 22, 1963, with Jackie Kennedy at his side after JFK's assassination. Work begins on Mount Rushmore in 1927, carving the faces of 4 U.S. presidents into South Dakota's Black Hills. In 1930, engineers staged demonstrations to prove the safety of newly popular double-decker buses. On September 13, 1929, Alexander Fleming announced the discovery of penicillin, revolutionizing medicine. Pilots Jackson and O'Brien attempt mid-air repairs during a record-breaking endurance flight attempt. In 1930, a technician services telephone lines at New York's central office on East 30th Street. Dutch inventor L. Death unveils a portable extendable bridge in 1926 for rapid deployment in emergencies. In 1911, Pratt, Kansas, overloaded telephone and electric wires reflected America's fast-growing infrastructure. The Ringling Brothers Circus Freak lineup poses for a group portrait in 1924. Muhammad Ali charms a crowd in the 1960s, photographed with a group of women. Electrotherapy, a controversial 19th century medical treatment using electricity, was widely promoted despite risks. The Sagrada Familia Basilica in Barcelona, photographed during its construction in 1905, remains unfinished to this day. Restoration at Stonehenge in 1957 aimed to preserve the prehistoric monument. In 1893, Chicago unveiled the world's first Ferris wheel, designed by George Washington Gale Ferris Jr. The luxurious 1940s Stratocruiser offered long-distance international air travel in style. Between 1954 and 1965, the Godzilla films became cultural icons in Japan and worldwide. Sweden's nationwide switch from left to right-hand driving in 1967 was one of the largest traffic reorganizations in history. In 1909, a woman harvests hay in Cogna, Italy, highlighting rural life before mechanization. A 1936 proposal aimed to increase public access to the Eiffel Tower's second level. Tourists climb an Egyptian pyramid in the late 1800s, when direct climbing was still permitted. A Scottish fisherman from the Orkney Islands is photographed in the late 19th century, reflecting the region's maritime traditions. A motorbike rides through Paris's Champ de Mars Park in 1922. In 1973, circus performer Suma Lamonte shows off her juggling skills. Polish photographer Kazimierz Szand captures striking 1933 images of European life. In 1932, sunbathers experimented with cellophane blankets, seen as a health craze. A 1958 beauty class at Helena Rubinstein's New York salon teaches skincare and makeup. The Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles during the 1920s shows its iconic hillside design. Workers clean a Chrysler Building eagle ornament high above New York in 1932. On April 10, 1947, Ford's assembly line stopped in honor of Henry Ford's funeral. Prague mourns Czechoslovakia's first president, Tomáš Masaryk, in September 1937. An African-American family sits for a formal portrait in 1904, preserving their legacy in a segregated era. An Inuit mother and child at Cape Prince of Wales, Alaska, are photographed in 1927. On the E.T. set in 1983, Steven Spielberg poses with Harrison Ford and screenwriter Melissa Matheson. An Italian family rides a Lambretta scooter in Sicily, 1963. The Guinness Brewery in Dublin, Ireland, photographed in 1910, remains an Irish icon. Inside the Star Wars Millennium Falcon set, filmmakers create one of cinema's most iconic spacecraft. A Ferris wheel ride in Kiev, Ukrainian SSR, 1986, contrasts with the looming Chernobyl disaster. Audrey Hepburn reviews a UNICEF radio script in 1953. The Golden Gate Bridge construction progresses in 1936. Actor Nicolas Cage poses with his father, August Coppola, in 1988. Malcolm X gazes from his apartment window in 1964, a defining moment in the civil rights struggle. Friends camp in Golden Gate Park beside a Briscoe sedan in 1920. Charlie Chaplin shares the screen with his co-star in one of his many iconic film endings. Sophia Loren, a timeless star of Italian and world cinema, captured in her prime. A 1965 innovation places a television inside a car for entertainment on the go. A crowded Japanese commuter train in 1964 reflects Tokyo's rapid urban growth. The New Hampshire Orphans Home operated from 1871 to 1959, housing generations of children. A young girl photographed during the 1930s. Depression reflects the era's struggles. Brigitte Bardot dances on a Paris rooftop in 1952, already a rising French cinema star. Swedish beauty queen Kiki Håkansson becomes the first Miss World in 1951. Anthony Perkins films Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho in 1960. A young Tony Hawk practices at his local skate park in the 1980s. On January 15, 1976, British Airways takes delivery of its first Concorde. In 1924, Ford's Model T sells for $260, making automobiles accessible to the masses. In 1844, Queen Victoria is photographed with her eldest daughter, Princess Victoria. Los Angeles Greyhound Terminal vending machines serve travelers in the 1950s. A Japanese mother balances her children in a bucket on her head in the early 1900s. King George V hunts in Nepal's Terai jungle in 1911. Two friends play banjo in the 1920s when folk and jazz thrived. P.T. Barnum poses with Tom Thumb, one of his most famous performers. around 1850. The Crystal Palace in Sydenham, England, rebuilt in 1855, stands as a glass and iron marvel. Walt Disney tells his grandson a bedtime story in 1955, showing his family side. Woody Allen and Diane Keaton film Manhattan in 1979. Rome's Lost and Found office stores rows of umbrellas in 1964. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, consider using the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us continue sharing rare and powerful historical moments. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Do you want